Kia ora everybody. I must admit I was very nervous this morning before this, but after having arrived, I'm feeling pretty good. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Ka pai. Ko whitire e te maunga, ko raukawa te moana, ko takapu wāhia te marae, ko Ngāti Toa te iwi, ko te rā tōku ingoa. So my name is TeRa and I'm going to share with you some reflections on my life and how that has shaped my identity as a Māori person of mixed ancestry, someone who is proud of all the regions, islands, continents that my ancestors descend from. I grew up in a small area called TeRa, often called the Ruru, and affectionately and colloquially referred to as the Valley. It was predominantly a Māori community when I was growing up there. There were some Pākehā people around who were either farmers or had married into the local Māori families, but it was predominantly Māori at the time. There are 3 living marae there, Te Tikanga up top, Paupata deep in the valley, and Te Hiri just around the corner. There's also another old marae that was unused called Kōtuku that looked pretty scary. And basically, a lot of the kids, we used to hang out together of different ages. We would all walk the valleys, climb the hills, explore the forest, swim in the Waituna stream and the Rangitike River. And it was an incredibly idyllic place to grow up. It was beautiful. It's a place that I took for granted for most of my life until I was probably in my early 20s when I realised just how important it was in terms of its influence on myself and my siblings. So it was a peaceful place, till one morning that peace was shattered. Now, this is something that might be a bit heavy for some, but it's an important part of the story. So as I say, it was a peaceful place. Everyone was just going, doing what they're doing, whānau living, hanging out, loving each other, being people. Then one day, the valley got raided by the police. Armed Defenders Squad. They came in and it was as if they did a big foul swoop across the whole valley to see what would come up. And they came in as though they were raiding an armed militant group, but all they were doing was raiding a lot of innocent families. They kicked down our door. They knocked my mother back, who was behind the door. My brother was telling me today that when it first happened, he thought they must be gangbangers or something. Because we thought, who would be doing that? And then he heard the police. So then we realised what was happening. They went into the bathroom where my sister, who was about 11 or 12 at the time, was having a shower. And they pulled the curtain back, exposing her naked body to masked and armed men. Then they hauled us all into our parents' room. My father was away working at the time, so it was my older sister, my older brother, my mother, and myself. I was only a toddler. But this event was so traumatic that it was my first memory. And they had us all in the room with the guns at us. And I remember my mother was crying uncontrollably. And there was a female police officer who was telling her, don't cry, you're upsetting your kids. And they were adorned with balaclavas and they had guns pointed at us. And through talking to people about that as I got older, realised that the reason they came in had nothing to do with anyone there. We were all innocent, but they did it anyway. But that taught me a lot in terms of Aotearoa New Zealand, power in this country, but I'm going to leave that there for now. And I'm going to come back to it later. Around the same time, my kuia, my grandmother, who we used to call Nan, Hariatarangi Kauia Elkington, was dying of lung cancer. She was living at our marae in Porirua, Takapu Wāhia at the time, and she was staying in the Kaumātua flats, which is where our old people go and stay. I remember we used to travel from Te Reo down to Porirua, it seemed like every week, which is about 2 hours away, to see her, spend time with whānau. And then when she finally passed away, I remember the tangihanga was just, the marae was just alive. There were so many people there in the wharekai. There were people constantly preparing food. It seemed like hangi were being turned over all the time. Guests were coming for days. There were the Aotea, the open space of the marae, was just full of people, kids playing, and old people talking about their lives, reminiscing, having a laugh, and just generally being together. I remember there was this old koraiwa, this old man, who to me at that time was about maybe this tall, was scary. I thought, geez, that guy's scary, grumpy, had his toko, and it looked like he was telling everyone off all the time. But in retrospect, he was there to make sure that our tikanga, our customs and practices were upheld. At night, people would come in and sing, dance, tell stories, reminisce, talk about my kuia, laugh and cry together. And I remember falling asleep every night under the protective gaze of all the popo, all the carvings depicting our ancestors. They're like the safest place to be in the world. Then when she finally passed, when the final day came and we buried her, I remember Apata Urupa, I remember her brothers, heaps of her whānau, doing haka, people singing, crying. Remember the tears of my father and all his siblings as they were lowering their mother down into her final resting place. It was a sad time, but it also was an important time. It was profound in sowing the seed inside of me of my Māori identity. Around the same time, I remember at primary school, this was a bit of a dodgy thing I think that the teacher did, but we're only about 6 or 7, and she was saying, put your hand up if you're of a certain ethnic or cultural group. In retrospect, I think that's probably not very appropriate to do that. And when she said, put your hand up if you're Māori, I put my hand straight up. And everyone laughed at me. Like the whole room just roared with laughter. Even my mates who I grew up with cracked up at me, and one of them goes, oh, I've never seen a blonde Māori before. And I was like, hey, I didn't even understand what he was talking about. For me at that time, I thought everyone was Māori. Like I thought my Pākehā mother was Māori. I literally didn't even have a concept of people not being Māori. I thought everyone was Māori. But obviously in retrospect, it was because I had pale skin. I had much lighter hair than I do now. But that taught me a lot about how people perceive me, but didn't really deter me from developing an identity as a Māori person, because those seeds had already been sown and they were already growing at that time. Grew up, went to Fielding High School. When that finished, I moved down to Wellington to study at Victoria University. Eventually I started studying Te Reo Māori, and during that time I met heaps of Māori people who had also come from all around the North Island to Victoria to study Te Reo Māori, and we used to hang out. We developed a really strong support base amongst ourselves, both academically and emotionally. We used to talk together, laugh together, sing together, drink together, and through those nights realised they all had the same story that I did about being raided by the armed offenders when they were just little kids. And I know from my experience and knowing them that they weren't some dangerous threat to the community. Like I couldn't understand. Then I realised none of my Pākehā friends had ever been raided by the armed offenders, but all these Māori friends I just made had all been raided by the armed offenders. I was thinking, oh yep, I know what that is. That's when I realised what institutional racism is. And that shaped a big part of my perspective on the government, not in a hateful way, in a critical way. And thinking back on it, don't hold it heavy within myself, but it taught me a lot, those experiences. I realised it wasn't an isolated event that happened just in the valley that I grew up in. It was actually happening all over the country, and it was actually a continuation of the violence of colonisation on Māori people. And so I learned a lot through just talking with those friends while we were learning Te Reo Māori. And then around the same time, I was spending a lot of time with my father, who had moved back from where we grew up to where he grew up in Porirua at our marae in Takapū Wāhia. I go see him a lot. And he used to take me around, meeting all his relations who he grew up with, people he'd known for like 70 years. And it was remarkable how much they all loved each other. First cousins, second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins, fifth cousins, sixth cousins, neighbours their whole life, and they still love each other. And they used to tell each other all the time, "Oh, I love you, cuz. Oh, good to see you, cuz. Oh, I love you heaps, cuz." One of them said to me, "I love your dad, but he just makes it hard sometimes." But just to see that aroha there, that they all had for each other, grown people, no sort of staunch like male, you can't say you love people. These people are open with saying how much they loved each other. And it was a beautiful thing. And I'm going to wrap it up there with aroha. Like the passing of Matariki every year, aroha has been a constant in my life, regardless of the incidents, the events at home in Te Reo with the police. Aroha has always been there. It's always been there. It's shaped me, it's grown me, and it's given me the tools to be able to show aroha to the people around me. And so I just want to leave with that. Aroha, aroha, aroha is one of the most defining characteristics of us as people. And so, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.